And welcome to the OBX Wave Report. I am Robert Scribbler, your wave reporter on all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And today we are going to talk about all the things. We've got some 1 to 4 foot waves breaking across the Outer Banks today as conditions continue to moderate, although we get this beautiful base swell coming out of the east from a stormy North Atlantic Ocean, so we've still got some nice waves in the range of 1 to 4 feet, and I did get a shot of these waves yesterday at Jeanette's Pier. Looks like 2 to 4 foot waves off Jeanette's Pier yesterday. Right now at Jeanette's Pier, very similar conditions. Although temperatures have warmed up a little bit, and we'll see that trend continue out ahead of a front that's swooping in by Saturday. And we might get out to the beaches for a nice little surf session tomorrow. We'll have to see. I've had a little batch of the sniffles, which I'm sure is not too uncommon for surfers in the wintertime. Um, might have pushed things just a little bit too hard in my little 2-3 millimeter wetsuit, but don't feel like too much of a softie because I've run into at least one other surfer who did get the sniffles due to the cold air and temperature changes. It's one of the perils of venturing out into the North Atlantic Ocean in the wintertime. You've got to make sure that you maintain your health, and with the various things out there, the various bugs out there, you've got to take extra good care of yourself, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing my best to both stay healthy and eat well and maintain hydration and all of the good things there, with regards to my personal health. But um, I feel like I'm on the mend, so we might get out into the water tomorrow. And tomorrow is a warmer day, and we have a very enthusiastic new surfer that wants to head out as well. So we want to make sure we do our best to help support the new surfers out there as well. Okay, so yeah. So here is a beautiful shot from the north side of Jeanette's Pier yesterday, looking at a sandbar to the north of the pier where the waves really line up nicely. Man, do they just call to me. It's like I can feel like this tug. It's almost like this magnetic tug toward the ocean. I can't stand being even, a little bit sick because it's planted me here on shore. Although I must say that the past couple of days have been not great for surfing, either too rough or too cold, temperature wise. So I guess if I was going to get the sniffles, this was the time for it. So let's get into the wave report. I'm going to talk about a lot of things as we typically do. Um, we will be focusing on waves in the Outer Banks, but we will also be looking at the weather and climate picture for the lower 48. Um, and we'll also be looking at some of the weather and climate picture that influences weather in the Northern Hemisphere. And I'm doing this because I feel like it's something that really just generally should be done. When we talk about weather, we should be talking about climate too. So I'm doing it. Hopefully, there will be others that will do this as well. And this is a wave report that looks at the weather. And we are here on the Outer Banks, which are right on the edge. We're on the edge of the world, when it comes to so many things. But we are right here at the frontier of the impacts from the climate crisis. And we've got so much to lose and so many good things to fight for. And that's what we're here for. We're going to surf. We're going to have some fun. We're going to enjoy our lives, but we're going to fight for the things that matter. All right. So looking at well, actually, and we're going to do it with a cat that's sitting in our laps purring. What better way to do it, right? All right. So looking at the water vapor measure provided by the Global Forecast System model, this is a total precipitable water measure, I did want to show you that the atmospheric river has moved a bit to the south of California here. And it did look like that California might get a little bit of a respite. And that does appear to be the case over the next couple of days. But please don't let yourselves fall into a false sense of security out there in California, because this atmospheric river is going to deliver, looks like it's going to deliver another storm by Monday. Just go ahead and advance this model here. I'm going to move it. You can see these little ripples moving along the atmospheric river pointing at California. And the most recent batch of moisture that's going to be heading in by Monday begins to form out here in the model and then starts to impact California. Looks like, see, today is the 16th. So Monday, Tuesday, possibly into Wednesday, as a series of storms continues to ride up this atmospheric river that's pulling a lot of moisture out of the equatorial Pacific, bringing it up over Hawaii, and then hurling it toward California. California has been the focus of very severe weather this winter. We have record precipitation totals. I believe I saw a climatologist talking about the snowpack being twice the normal size, more than twice the normal size for parts of California. So it's just nuts, the amount of precipitation that California has received. And California has been undergoing hard swings between drought and flood and severe precipitation. That is a hallmark of climate change, folks. The warmer the atmosphere, the more water vapor it holds, the more evaporation that happens off the lands, and you get those extremes between wet and dry that impact certain regions of the world. And California is one of the more vulnerable regions when it comes to that. Okay, so just a note on California and the atmospheric river. I do want to show you guys the beautiful satellite shot provided by NOAA. And of course, we're going to advance this for today. And we see this big, massive clouds across the central US piling up, powerful, tall, thick clouds in association with another front that is moving into the central US, sparking off the potential for severe weather for a portion of the US Southeast. We'll talk a little bit about that. This front is expected to move to the east, bring some strong winds up from the south, particularly for the south-facing beaches for the Outer Banks, possible gale force gusts tomorrow. And then we're expected to see some storms run in through the Outer Banks on Saturday. These storms aren't expected to be too severe, at least in the forecast predictions that I've been looking at. Please pay attention to your local weather statements. So it looks like most of the severe weather is going to be south and west of the Outer Banks, but we do have the potential for some rains on Saturday as the front is expected to sweep on through. And then out west, we've got that little break for California. Much welcome to that break, but another storm from the atmospheric river lurking offshore and expected again by Monday. Looking at the enhanced cloud tops, you can see that big mass of tall clouds swirling up over the central US, tapping into some Pacific moisture, bit of that atmospheric river feeding into that. And you can also see the Gulf moisture flows feeding into it. The Gulf of Mexico notably is much warmer than normal at the ocean surface, this helping to fuel the storms in this weather system moving across the central US. Looking at the National Weather Service radar, we've got all sorts of alerts up in association with these massive storms in the central US. We've got, looks like small craft advisories up for the Outer Banks right now. No gale warnings or watches up as yet. So we'll just have to see how that progresses. And then for California, most of the alerts have fallen off as we've gotten a bit of a respite in the pulses of storms coming one after the other, almost in this like rhythmic progression off the atmospheric river coming in off the Pacific. We've had now a respite, a bit of a hiatus, a much welcome lull for that. So, but unfortunately, more storms coming for California. Now let's get down to the local weather picture for Jeanette's Pier and for other locations across the Outer Banks. local wave picture. So we're going to start out at Jeanette's Pier, and right now at Jeanette's Pier we have waves in the range of 2 to 4 feet. This has been the case since yesterday afternoon. Winds have come down. The swell is actually being allowed to progress towards shore as the winds have come down. So we have a nice 2 to 4 foot swell coming in. Winds out of the northwest at 13 miles per hour. That's a cross shore flow. Might be chopping up those waves a little bit, but 13 miles per hour isn't too strong, so it shouldn't be too choppy. Primary swell coming in out of the northeast at 8 seconds. It's a 4 foot swell. Air temperatures right now at 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures a little bit colder down there at Jeanette's Pier at 49. So very chilly in the ocean. Warming up in the air might be more pleasant, but probably, I mean, pleasant is a relative term. Um, Not going to be able to spend a lot of time out there in the cold water unless you've got some pretty efficient cold weather gear, pretty warm gear for Jeanette's Pier. The weather forecast for Jeanette's Pier for today is mostly sunny with a high of 50, so not getting too warm today. Heading on down the coast, we have smaller waves in the Esterns region in the range of 1 to 2 feet, and Rodanth also seeing 1 to 2 foot waves as well. Getting on down to Avon, waves are in the range of 2 to 3 feet with winds coming out of the northwest at 16 miles per hour. That is an offshore flow. Likely more hollow waves there at Avon with those offshore winds. Avon is just a really nice spot for hollow waves. Primary swell coming in at 10 seconds, 4 foot, not completely lining up as it comes in out of the northeast. So making a bit of a turn there and losing some height as it makes the turn in towards shore. Present air temperatures at Avon are 47 degrees and ocean water temperatures 56. So considerably warmer down there at Avon, although 56 is by no stretch of the imagination warm water. So you're going to need your cold water gear there as well. Weather conditions today for Avon, mostly sunny and expected high today of 54 degrees Fahrenheit. And then last of all, heading down the beach to Buxton, we find that Buxton is once again the big wave spot of the Outer Banks with 3 to 4 foot waves. Not a huge margin when it comes to larger waves there, but slightly larger swell just generally. Winds out of the north-northwest at 13 miles per hour. That is an offshore flow. Primary swell coming in at 8 seconds. That is a 5 foot swell out of the northeast, not lining up exactly, so we're not getting an amplification to the swell. The swell is actually getting tamped down a little bit as it turns into shore. Air temperatures there at Buxton, 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And weather conditions today at Buxton expected to be mostly sunny with a high of 54, certainly warming up a bit from yesterday. Now, getting into the broader weather and climate discussion, we continue to note that warmer than normal temperatures are persisting over the Asian continent, with warmer air invasions of the Arctic coming from the Asian zone. Does appear that the cold is getting mushed up a little bit between these warmer air invasions, centering a little bit more toward the pole, although we do have a continuation of the influx of cold air moving in through the northwestern U.S. and then sweeping on south and east. And this has been a pretty consistent pattern over the past days and weeks. And this pattern does appear to continue at least for the next week or so. And right now, over the U.S. Southeast, we do still have, let me just we do still have cooler than normal conditions, although with the atmospheric river linking up to the front, ahead of the front in the central U.S., we do have warmer than normal conditions out ahead of the next cold air impulse coming in from the north and west. And I did talk about those much warmer than normal conditions over Asia. You can see that in this temperature anomaly map provided by Karsten Houston. And we can see that the global anomaly is around 0.65 degrees Celsius above normal, with the Arctic now the hot spot, and most of that heat definitely on the Siberian side as you see it now. Looking at NOAA's quantitative prediction forecast, we do have an indicator for where the storms will form over the next 7 days. And once again, California is under the gun from that atmospheric river. At the very least, we're going to see some severe storms coming into California early next week, possibly another impulse later in the week. The Rockies are going to get some spillover from that, particularly in the higher elevations. The U.S. Gulf Coast region under the gun for some severe weather, and then we have the potential for nor'easter formation off the U.S. southeast coast, which is, excuse me, which is a shift as we have had a tendency for nor'easter formation off the U.S. northeast coast. So this shift does mean that the Outer Banks might see more in the range of nor'easters. We're going to have to keep a weather eye to this. There has been some indicators in the past of nor'easter formation that have not yet really lined up for the Outer Banks, and so I'm not going to get too riled up about it, but it does look like by Wednesday we might have a little bit of a nor'easter for the Outer Banks. Doesn't look too intense though in the models. All right, looking at the severe weather potential for today, we have an enhanced risk of severe weather, meaning supercell type thunderstorms, hail, possible tornadoes, severe thunderstorms for parts of Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Please pay attention to your local weather experts and your emergency management folk for any alerts out there. Please stay safe. And then as we get into tomorrow, the focus for the enhanced or slight risk of severe weather moves more toward the Gulf Coast. And then as we get into Saturday, not much risk at all of severe thunderstorms. So the main risk, at least in this Storm Prediction Center outlook, focusing on today. Looking at the global forecast system model, I'm going to have to back this up to the last model because the most recent model hasn't fully loaded yet. I do want to show you this storm system as is expected to develop with those potential for severe thunderstorms later today and into early tomorrow, sweeping through Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And then toward the Gulf Coast as we get into the day on Saturday. Out ahead of this front, we expect to see some strong southwest winds for parts of the Outer Banks. Could see gusts up to 40 miles per hour or more for some of the south beaches, particularly in Buxton, Billy Mitchell, places like that. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Much warmer temperatures tomorrow. I'm actually on Saturday, so much warmer temperatures tomorrow ahead of the front. And then as the front moves in on Saturday, we expect rainy conditions for the Outer Banks. And then the front heads on offshore by Sunday. And then into Monday, we start to see the front stall out across the Gulf. This provides fuel for the formation of a new low pressure system. The cloudiness and instability, the clash between the warm and the cold, all of it providing some impetus for storms to form. And then we also see the most recent impulse starting to move in to California, this in the model on Tuesday. And then as we get into the day on Wednesday, the impulse is expected to move through the Gulf, start to focus more on the Atlantic, with a low pressure forming offshore on Wednesday off the Carolinas, and then tracking off toward the east as it intensifies. Looks like some pretty intense storms wrapping around the center, although pressures in the center of the storm not too low in the 990s to 1000 millibar range. So that's not too intense. So far, not really a major nor'easter predicted. We will have to see how things develop. Although the tendency for this nor'easter to form has now been the model for 3 days. So we are looking more and more certain at a mild to moderate nor'easter by midweek, and we'll just have to see if the forecast does change, because there is a lot of fuel for cyclonic intensification out there over the Atlantic Ocean with those warmer than normal ocean temperatures, and similarly down there in the Gulf of Mexico. And then getting into the wave forecast for the next 5 days, it does look like the waves will tend to be in the 1 to 3, 2 to 4, 2 to 5 foot range over the next 3 days. And then as we get into early next week with the nor'easter formation, we could expect some rough stuff. So right now, we've got a swell coming out of the northeast in the nearshore environment. That swell is in the range of about 4 feet. And that's consistent with the observations that we've seen at the coastline this morning. And then for tomorrow, with those south winds starting to come in, we get the swell is a little bit more confused. We get some swell coming in from the south, some remnant swell coming in from the northeast, swell in the near offshore environment in the range of 4 feet, 3.5 to 4.5 feet. So we could still have some decent waves in some locations in the 1 to 3, 2 to 3 foot range, depending on your beach. Of course, for the south facing beaches, you get those wind driven waves, which could start to get rather large as we get later into the day with those strong southwest winds ahead of the front. And then as we get into Saturday, the waves from the south start to pick up as those strong winds have an effect on the ocean. Those strong southwest winds start to have an effect on the ocean on Saturday. Of course, with a southwest swell, the north-facing beaches will tend to get blown out, although we could still have some wraparound swells depending on the location. And then as we get into Sunday, the front passes, we get some northwest winds and colder temperatures with swells in the range of 4 to 5 feet. Might be a little choppy with those northwest winds coming in. It seems a little bit more northerly, and the wind's actually not too crazy strong, so it might not be as choppy as recently. Actually, might be a relatively decent day. Let's see what the temperatures are. Although cold temperatures expected on Sunday in the lower 40s. So it's not a very pleasant day for surfing. If you want to prevent the sniffles, you may want to abstain. But nonetheless, might not be too terrible on Sunday. And then as we get into today on Monday, we get a more uniform swell from the north and east in the range of 3 to 5 feet. Monday might just generally be a better day for waves, although those winds coming out of the northeast at about 20 miles per hour. So it could be a little choppy, could be a little rough, depending on Monday. And then as we get into the day on Tuesday, hold on. Yeah, looks like we don't really. Let's see if we can tease out to Tuesday. But as we get into the day on Tuesday, the late into the day on Monday, and then, this is today. Let's go back to, hold on now. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then getting later into the day on Monday, the swell seeming to calm a little bit as, let's see, do the winds calm down? Looks like the winds do tend to be calming down. Looks like a little low pressure system. Is that high? No, high pressure system. High pressure system developing off the US East Coast, or building in off the US East Coast, providing those northeast winds, probably quite cold as we get late into the day on Monday. And looks like Tuesday might actually be a relatively decent day for waves as we wait for the formation of the nor'easter on Wednesday. So over the next few days, waves not amazing, but probably in the range of 1 to 5 feet generally, except with the exception being ahead of the front and those strong southwest winds pushing up tall waves, particularly on Saturday, but very rough. So a general wave forecast for you guys and a comprehensive wave report. Thank you for joining me once again. And as I always do, I'm just going to ask you guys to please do everything you can to help speed the transition to clean energy, that being wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles, and thereby defend our coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning, those impacts being both rising sea levels and more intense storms. So thank you for joining me once again, and I will be back with you shortly.